evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Alpana Avasthi, Associate Consultant at Gleneagles Hospital, Mumbai. So, my topic for today is tropical infections from A to Z. So, basically, there are n number of tropical infections we know of, like in the world. Like, see, tropics are basically the areas near the equator. So, we have all the infections which are prominent in these hot and humid areas. But in this topic, from the surgical point of view, I will cover those which will be relevant in our future surgical practice. There are n number of tropical infections all over the world, but we will go through some of them which are really surgical relevant to us. So to be very precise, there are some 8 to 10 tropical infections we'll be studying in this lecture. What are tropical infections? So as a definition, tropical infections are infestations. They are surgical conditions that occur in the regions of Earth surrounding the equator. As I told you in my first this line, starting with the most commonest of one is the amoebiasis. We see in any part of the world you go, you will see patients of amoebiasis, whether in India, Africa, America, or anywhere, in UK, everywhere. Then we have ascariasis, the round worm infestation, which is also very common in the West as well as the East. So these are all the A's. Now we slowly come to the A, B, C, Asiatic cholangiohepatitis. Okay, then we come to, yes, F, that is the filariasis. Okay, then we have the hydatid disease. Okay, that is the echinococcus infection, which is also very common both in tropics as well as in the other parts of the world. Leprosy mostly prominent in India, but now India has also eradicated it, but some patients we face of leprosy. Then we have mycetoma infection. We have poliomyelitis, which has also been eradicated in India. But still, we have some cases who have already been affected by polio, which we have to deal, in the way of any infection affecting them. So we should have an idea about them. We have tropical chronic pancreatitis. Okay, that is also one infection which is prevalent in the tropics. Then we have tuberculosis, very, very prevalent and one of the most notorious infections, particularly in India, Southeast Asian countries. We have the typhoid. That is also prevalent, but it is not a very devastating, but sometimes it can lead to detrimental conditions. So now first we come to the most commonest of them, that is the amoebiasis. So what is amoebiasis? We discuss the pathogenesis, the clinical features, the investigations, and the treatment aspect. So first of all, it is caused by Entamoeba histolytica. It is mostly seen. We have the cysts are the non-infective and the trophozoites are the infective. So basically, we have the feces where the cysts are there, which are ingested by the humans. Then these cysts, they first travel to the small bowel. The small bowel, they release the trophozoites, which is the infective form. Some trophozoites, they go in the large bowel and they cause ulcers, which are the classical flask-shaped ulcers. Some trophozoites, through the portal circulation, can go to the liver. They can form the liver abscesses, or through the portal circulation only, they can go in the systemic circulation. Then they can form amoebic abscesses anywhere in the body. It can be lung, they can be anywhere. In the blood, they can form abscesses anywhere. So these are the infect. And sometimes some of these trophozoites, sometimes if the immunity of the host is very strong, they don't cause any infection. And then what they do is they get excreted through the feces, and then in the form which then become infected, but then they can cause yes host. But they can also be an asymptomatic carrier and the still goes on. Then, so some of the major conditions which are caused by amoebiasis, they can be amoebic hepatitis. As I told you, through the portal circulation, the trophozoa, they can affect the liver. Mostly they affect the right lobe of the liver because there is a direct communication from the superior mesenteric circulation to from the portal to the superior mesenteric, which goes in the liver. Then over there, they form the hepatocyte necrosis. Okay, they cause the ischemic necrosis. Then they form a very saucy, like a sterile material because of the ischemic necrosis of the hepatocytes, which we call in the common language anchovy sauce. Anchovy sauce is not prevalent in the Indian subcontinent, but in the other continents, like it's a sauce which is a very like a very serious, like a very brownish color sauce, which is the color of the anchovy sauce, and it is seen in this amoebiasis. So basically, when it gets secondly infected, then by the streptococcus or any other bacteria, then we have what is called as the infective abscess, which causes having pus. And then, you know, you have, as it is, if the amoebic abscess is causing a issue, you have to drain the abscess basically. So therapeutically, you have to drain, you have to sometimes diagnostically drain if the patient is having pressure effects, you know. So that is the amoebic abscess. So amoebic abscess is one of the most common extra intestinal condition of amoeba. So that is, so amoeba, basically the intestinal infections are the most common, but amoebic abscess is the extraintestinal manifestation of amoebiasis. Then we come to a condition called amoeboma. So basically how the amoebiasis can affect even the young, it can affect the old population, it can affect everybody. But when the patients come with chronic malnutrition, they come present with anemia, they have malaise, loss of appetite. And when you evaluate them, you sometimes, when you investigate in detail, like in a sonography or a CT scan, you find a mass in the right side of the colon. Sometimes it is very, very difficult to differentiate it from a carcinoma, especially when we encounter the older population, the old people. It's because the symptoms are the same. You have a mucoid, bloody diarrhea, you have weight loss, you have loss of appetite, you have the same symptoms. But you need to sometimes test the stool sample, or you have to ask the history when the patient is coming from a tropical country or they've just visited a tropical country. And obviously, you should also see from the CT scan point of view where how well you can diagnose it. But even, for example, if you're giving a patient an amoebic treatment and if he's not getting better and it is causing other conditions like obstruction, or the patient is not able to pass any flatus motion, then definitely you should go for the surgical treatment. That can be even some times to the extent of subtotal colectomy. And then the mass has to be sent. So sometimes it can also be an amoeboma mixed with a carcinoma, or sometimes it can be only an amoeboma, or sometimes it can be a pure carcinoma. Flash-shaped ulcers, I've already told you, the large bowel, these are flash-shaped ulcers, classical ulcers, which you can just not miss it. And the pathologist will call you and say, you doc, this is a typical amoebic infection, and please treat your patient with metronidazole. And mostly we put the patients on metronidazole along with another generation cephalosporins. But if not, we have to add those in our drug treatment charts. Coming to a basic life cycle, as I initially have just given you an idea, but still I'll just show you how the life cycle of the amoeba goes. You have the encystation, you have the excistation stage, and the multiplication of the trophozoa. Okay, and how it comes in the form of how it affects the host, that is the human beings, you know, how we ingest it, and then it goes in the intestine, then it causes infection, causes ulcers. The ulcers can even perforate, or it can form abscesses, and it can form even septic abscesses, small abscesses in the blood stream. It is very difficult. Okay, so amoebiasis. So coming to the classical clinical presentation, as I told you, you can have an abdominal pain. Now this is both for a young and a older person. You can have an abdominal pain. You can have anorexia. You're not feeling well. You don't feel like eating. You have fever. You have night sweats. You have malaise. You just don't feel okay. You have cough. So when the amoebiasis affect the pulmonary circulation, they go inside the lung. You can have a dry cough. You can have a weight loss due to anorexia. You're not eating well, you're undergoing a malnutrition phase, and therefore you have weight loss. And even more, you can have a palpable mass in the right iliac fossa, and plus it is combined with a blood-stained mucoid diarrhea. So what you look for in your patient? So definitely in our era now we send all the blood tests, so we see the hemoglobin in the CBC, we'll see anemia, we have leukocytosis, we have raised ESR, we have CRP, which is increased, we have hypoalbuminemia, we have deranged LFTs, that is the liver function test, and we have the raised alkaline phosphatase. We have the other specific tests which you can have is indirect hematoglobulins, they are increased. We have the specific ELISA test, which is very specific for amoebiasis. Okay. And then we can also do, in a case of patients who having only rectosigmoid ulcers, you can do a sigmoidocolonoscopy, which can be a very diagnostic tool in such cases. Obviously, I told you, you can, in nowadays era, we already do sonography and CT scan for any patients coming with pain and abdomen. And then we can, to some extent, diagnose if the patient is having a right colonic mass, or if your patient is having ulcers, or in dire circumstances when the patient comes with perforation or obstruction, then we can think of, especially if the patient is coming, we are in India, we are in tropics, but if a patient is coming from another tropical country, we should suspect this in mind. So what are the microscopies? So these are a very, very classical flash-shaped ulcers, which you can see in a histopath.